You are listening to the Under the Rug podcast with Nalini Tranquim.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Under the Rug. I am your host, Nalini Tranquim. The cultural battle over gender has reached a new level. In the US, President Donald Trump has taken a firm stance, signing a declaration that recognizes only two genders and banning biological men from women's sports. Meanwhile, in Australia, the fight is far from over. With an election on the horizon, is now the moment for real change. Well, today we welcome back Kirralie Smith to discuss her new book, Devastated: How Gender Ideology is Tearing Australian Families Apart, Trump's stance and impact in the fight against gender ideology, and what this means for Australia's future. So buckle up. This is a conversation you don't want to miss. Kirralie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me again, Nalini. It's lovely to see you.
I'm so excited to have you. Now, you do have little puppies on the scene.
I do, so I apologise in advance if they start yapping.
Listen, we're real women living real lives, okay? This is what it is. Listen, the last time we spoke, you shared about the legal challenges that you've faced, from AVOs to vilification complaints. Since then, we've seen Trump take bold action in the US, and the conversation around gender ideology continues to intensify. So tell us, since our last conversation, have you faced any further legal challenges or victories?
Look, it's really interesting. There's some things I can't really talk about other than to say I am under a 2-year apprehension of violence order for identifying a male in female sports. I am appealing that decision. I think there's a lot of contestable points in that decision. And I've had one vilification hearing and another one coming up mid-April. So quite bizarre to sit on a stand and have to explain that men are not women.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. So the fight is on, hey? Do you think Trump's actions in the US could influence Australian policy or even your own legal battles?
Look, I'm not sure how much they will impact my legal battles, but definitely policy in the sense that now the conversation is a part of the national agenda, because prior to Trump signing those executive orders, the Australian mainstream or legacy media were very reluctant to speak about these issues. But since he has made it such a huge issue, our media can't ignore it any longer. And so it is being spoken about. People are waking up. There's been, a lot of discussion about this in print media and television media. So I'm really encouraged by that. But there's still a very long way to go in Australia, because we don't have executive orders, and we have two parties that are saying they're not committed to changing the Sex Discrimination Act, putting protections for sex back in the Sex Discrimination Act. So still a long way to go.
Long way to go. In our last interview, you emphasized how important it is for political leaders to be pressured into action. Yet many remain hesitant or uninformed. With an Australian election literally just months away, let's talk about what's at stake here. So why do you think Australian politicians have been so reluctant to take a firm stand on gender ideology?
It's quite mind-boggling, to be honest, because nearly everyone outside of the Liberal Party or the Labor Party is more than willing to and prepared to say that there's only two sexes, male and female. No one can change their sex. Even the National Party, which is a part of the coalition, have a policy that says they will reinstate definitions of sex back into the Sex Discrimination Act, that this isn't about being bigoted or transphobic or any of those things. It's simply that women require sex-based rights in Australia. Children require safeguarding. And the way the current law reads, those things don't exist. We've been raised in law. And so both Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese have said that they have no appetite for changing the law and that they don't want this to be an election issue. But I have news for them. It is going to be an election issue. There'll be people who want to go out and get the gotcha questions, but there's many more of us who will be committed to ensuring that this is a part of the public debate.
Yeah, come on. What are the most practical and impactful ways that everyday Australians can push for change in the lead up to the election?
Yeah, look, there's quite a lot of ways. And the first is obviously having the conversations both in person and online, making sure that you're sharing content, that you're bringing this up. You know, really every Aussie family is somehow involved in a sporting club or knows somebody who is. This is a massive issue in the sports world because there are many males playing in female competitions. Sky News did a great news special on women in sport, and so that can be shared. There's also, binary.org.au that I run. We're going to have a massive election campaign, particularly focusing on Western Sydney, but there'll be opportunities to do leaflet drops, to financially contribute to having mobile billboards going around. We will be doing a massive social media blitz, informing, educating and raising awareness for Australians of what's at stake here. And there's, many other campaigns, I'm sure, that will do similar things. So there's a lot that people can do. And first and foremost, I would say once your candidates are announced in your electorate, go and ask them, where do they stand on this? Why are they or aren't they protecting women's sex-based rights and child safeguarding? And I think that's a conversation that Australians have to have, and every candidate needs to know that we're interested in their answer.
Yeah, 100%. And for those who aren't aware, what's been going on in Western Sydney?
Well, Western Sydney is where where the election will be won and lost. It's also a very highly concentrated migrant area where family, obviously, and women's rights are very important. And so there are some Labor strongholds in that area and some seats that are a little bit marginal. So we feel that with our limited resources, that's the best use of concentration, where there's a lot of people. We can really sway the election. We can make this an issue because that's where the major parties focus. So that's where we will focus. But like I said, we'll have a national campaign on social media, and we'll invite any supporters to download some materials that they can letterbox drop and take to their own candidate forums and the like.
So good, Kirralie. Are there any politicians stepping up on this issue? And if so, who are they and how can we support them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, there'll be more than what I can name right now. But like I said, the National Party led by David Littleproud, Barnaby Joyce, my member Alison Penfold, she's hoping to become our member. There are many in the National Party who are on board with this. One Nation is extremely strong and firm. Pauline and Malcolm have been absolutely brilliant, as have the Libertarians, as have Family First. Lyle Shelton is doing a great job of promoting his party and Christian values. There's, the United Party. Clive Palmer's in trouble for taking out a full page or a half page ad on the front of the Age newspaper and the Newcastle Herald. So, like I said, most, of the minor parties are really on board with this because it is common sense. It is backed by evidence-based science. It's just reality. And it is mind-boggling that Labor and Liberal are pandering to a handful of men who wish they were women and have some sort of power over them, and I don't understand it.
We also spoke last time about the role of Christian schools, churches, and parents in this battle. With increasing pressure on religious organizations, I want to hear your thoughts on where things stand now. Churches and Christian schools are facing growing pressure to conform, right? Have you seen any new victories or concerns trending in this space?
Perhaps there are a small number of churches, church leaders beginning to really draw a line in the sand. All church leaders have to understand that as days go by, the contrast, the conflict is going to grow. We cannot appease all people. Yes, we can love all people, but loving people doesn't mean that we encourage lies and deception, that we walk in a pathway that's not the truth. Because as I say ad nauseum, the truth is not an idea or a concept. The truth is a person, and his name is Jesus. And if we proclaim to follow Jesus, then we must proclaim the truth. And the truth is the only kind way. I've been told by Christians and Christian leaders, it's so unkind, that the way that you treat transgender people. And I think, no, it's not. I love everyone. I love transgender people. I feel deeply sad and great compassion for these people who have been lied to and deceived, that somehow they can change their sex, because it's a lie. They cannot. The most compassionate, kind thing we can do is speak the truth, help them to accept who they are, and walk alongside them. That is the kind, truthful Jesus way of doing things. So I just want to say to church leaders, draw that line in the sand. Jesus is very strong, saying to us, in this world you will have trouble.
Yes.
I've overcome the world. He says he'll give us the words to speak when we're taken to court or before the leaders of the land. But it's going to happen. We're seeing the division, whether it's over Israel, whether it's over gender, whatever it is, climate worship. All of these issues are things where we have to take a stand now. We can't just go along and be in the grey area. There's no grey area.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so how does that look on the ground? Okay, so to my everyday listener, how can we as Christians respond in a way that is both bold and compassionate?
Yeah, and look, I've always said that there's a different way to address an ideology as there is to a person. You know, that individual relationship is very different to going out after an ideology. So there's two distinct levels here. And as I said, to address a person, an individual, every single person is valuable and worthwhile and has been created for a purpose, on purpose by God. And so we must relate to people that way and with kindness and compassion, but also firmness and true love, not wishy-washy feelings of love, but how can we get alongside these people and really help them to work through their gender dysphoria, their confusion, their rebellion, whatever it might be. However, on the ideology level, this battle is not against flesh and blood. We know that. So let's go hard. Prayer is the absolute number one weapon and tool that we must employ all day, every day. But secondly, speaking the truth, and speaking the truth to power is very, very important. We've been given a voice. Our voice is very important. And, I read through the Psalms just constantly because I've never been empowered or understood them the way I do right now, facing the tribulations and difficulties that I face. And so often God calls us, and David expresses that we must be a voice for the voiceless and we must use our voice responsibly. And so that's what I really encourage Christians to do, and get in your word. And you only need, it's great, the more you know, the better, but you only need a couple of really strong verses like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life to keep bringing us back to that hard center, that God is love, and it's going to be okay in the end. But in the meantime, we're called to be salt and light. The battle belongs to the Lord, but be salt and light. Don't hide your light under a bushel. Be that salt and light. And you'll be amazed at how encouraging that is, not just for Christians, but for people in the world. My organization, probably, around 100,000 or more subscribers and followers. I'd say at least half are Christian, but there's a lot that aren't. But they're just so encouraged and emboldened by the stand for truth and reality.
Yeah, that's good. What is your message to church leaders who feel torn between being inclusive and standing for biblical truth?
Well, like I said, I don't like the word inclusive. I think it's been so captured and changed, as has the word woman and child and everything else. And just exactly what I've already said. Who are you going to follow? Are you going to follow Jesus? Well, he's the truth. So speak the truth, lead in the truth. Get alongside these people. And it's costly. It's not easy to come alongside people who are struggling, and it doesn't matter what their struggle is. Most pastors will know this. It's really difficult. Reach out. And if you don't know what to do, reach out. Reach out and ask somebody who does or who's further along the track. Email me. I don't mind. There's no blanket, formula. This is what you do. But you build relationship with people. You care for their needs, but you don't compromise on truth and love in this situation.
So good.
That's all we can do.
We are in that day, girl. We need to know what we believe, what we stand for. We've seen countries like the UK, Sweden, and Finland start rolling back gender-affirming treatments for minors, acknowledging the long-term damage. Yet Australia seems to be doubling down. Why do you think Australia is refusing to follow suit?
Well, again, all I can say is it's fear of a very small, but what they perceive as a powerful lobby in the transgender space. But as you said, these countries have begun doing investigations and inquiries and clinical trials and things, and they're clearly seeing that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones are very dangerous medications. They've only been approved in certain situations, and it's not, let me be very clear, it's never been approved or trialed for children with gender confusion. It's for precocious puberty, which is, kids starting really, really young. It's for a very limited time, and there are side effects. Or they're chemical castration drugs for violent male sex offenders in prison. So this is mind-boggling that we're giving these drugs to children, sometimes only after a 20-minute consultation. There's lots of proof and evidence of this. These children are being left with horrendous catastrophic, irreversible damage, such as sterility, no sexual function, brain and bone development issues, cholesterol, like the list just goes on. And every single time people like Pauline Hanson or Alex Antic have put up a motion to debate this, to inquire, to have some sort of commission into this, the Labor and the Greens in particular have blocked it. Now, this is staggering because if they're so confident that these drugs are not harmful for children, why wouldn't they want it investigated? They know what the outcome would be. So we can only speculate on why they won't do this, but I'm so thankful to people like Pauline Hanson and Alex Antic who continually put this forward and won't relent because, you know, there's a whole cohort and generation of children that are being lied to and deceived here. And it's the outcomes are going to be horrendous because it's only been in about the last decade that these drugs have even been given. And so now we're seeing this massive amount of people detransitioning with the most horrendous stories. It's just cruel. It is utterly cruel what they've been through.
Yeah. Blimey, and that's where obviously now, I think that now is the perfect time for us to talk about your new book. You've titled it Devastated, How Gender Ideology is Tearing Australian Families Apart. Firstly, massive congratulations on its release. I know that this has been a lot of work. Kirralie, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, look, I will say to you, this has been it has been the most harrowing project or experience of my life. And it was born out of parents contacting me and telling me their stories, and most of them not feeling like they're understood or they're heard by anybody. And makes me want to cry just thinking about it. Only there's 9 families who have shared their stories in the book, but let me say they're representative of thousands around Australia. 3 of them have been bold enough to use their own identities. Or lots of people say to me, oh, these kids must come from broken homes or homes where parents aren't involved or don't care, blah, blah. It's so not true. These are Christian families, 2-parent families, very loving families who, you know, really invest in their children, who have given their children so many opportunities and so much care. But these children have been really, I'll say the word groomed and captured, particularly at school, particularly in the arts. That's a common thread through it all. And then the other side of things is social media. And of course, through the lockdowns of the COVID years, these children were just sucked into this vortex. And they're very often children who maybe don't feel like they fit or have, you know, all of them have underlying issues like trauma, autism, on the spectrum somehow, depression or eating disorders. And this just seemed like a really good solution because adults were falsely telling them, oh, if you just change your identity, you will overcome those issues. And it's not true. All the studies have shown that the depression, the suicide rates, everything increase once children go down these pathways. And so these stories are just to show Australians that these are everyday parents. They've all done exactly what you and I would do. They've taken their child to a GP or to a so-called gender clinic only to watch them be utterly betrayed by often very unqualified social workers or non-medical practitioners, grooming their children, removing children from their family's custody and causing this unbelievable harm. I cannot emphasize it enough. My husband, I'll put it this way, you know, when we did the book, I said to my husband, can you read this and let me know what you think? And he started reading it in the evenings and he literally threw the book, Nalini, and said, I'm not reading this at night. This is making me so mad and so sad. You can only read it in the mornings because it's a hard read. It's really difficult, but it's necessary. These are families just like yours and mine.
Is there a particular story that you'd like to highlight to our listeners?
Look, Tess's story, chapter 2, the first, I mean, all of them are just amazing and incredible, but Tess has been very open. That's her real name. Her daughter transitioned to a male identity 8 years ago. And it's a long story. It's the longest chapter in the book, but it's very detailed and it shows the great lengths that Tess went to in really trying to support her daughter and care for her daughter through this process. A very loving family. Who, you know, she went to the school, she went to the doctors, she did all of these things. And each step of the way, she was severely betrayed by government agencies that ultimately removed her daughter from her care. And now she has no contact with that beautiful, beautiful girl. Tess has endured so much. She has tried so hard to lobby politicians to raise awareness. to support other parents going through this ordeal as well. And she's the most beautiful, gentle soul you'll ever wish to meet. You can watch some of her interviews online, both on Binary, on Sky, on different places, but she is very representative of many people and has been so detailed in her account.
Yeah. What do you hope for readers to take away from this book?
Number one, awareness, just to understand that this is horrific. It's not just simply, like when you and I grew up, and I'm probably making assumptions here, but I think it's fair assumptions to make, there are trends, there are fads that all teenagers go through, some more harmful than others, but nearly all of them quite reversible, I guess, whether it's dyeing your hair black, getting a tattoo, piercings, being emo or goth or whatever it is. When I grew up, anorexia and eating disorders were a massive issue, but there was care and they were never affirmed in those things. They were always supported and challenged and brought through that sort of thing. But this is just something so incredibly different, that the stage that we're in. So it's really important that people understand and have an awareness of that. It's not just about changing your hairstyle and the clothes. Once you go down a medicalised pathway, these children are ruined for life. And so I think awareness, number one. Two, compassion, obviously, really understanding and not judging these families where this is happening, because it's not something that we can point the finger at. It's not something that we should be laying blame other than on a bureaucracy that's out of control and no one's taking accountability. And so the third thing would be to take action and to see how important it is to educate our lawmakers in particular and to continue lobbying, because they only care about numbers. And so the more numbers that we have coming to them from every angle, from every walk of life, from every political party, then that's the only way that we will affect change.
Yeah. I work with a lot of women, and I have observed over the years that for many, politics is out there and they don't have a voice. Like, there is nothing that I can do to change or to impact the direction of my nation. But that is an absolute lie.
Correct.
Right? So to your everyday mama, who drops her kids off at school and then she's at home during the day tending to her family's needs, what can she do actively now? All right. And we've got a window of opportunity here. I just get this really strong sense for Australia, man, we're in a critical window right now. What can she do actively?
Yeah. Look, it goes back to some of the things I said. Most have some sort of participation on social media. So I would be following accounts like yours and mine and others that are active in this space and resharing the content. I would be picking up the phone or sending an email. And it doesn't have to be long, and it doesn't have to be, eloquent or academic or any of these things, but just simply even ask your local members or email Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese and just ask simple questions like, why won't you? Why aren't women worth protecting? I'm a woman. I want my child protected.
Yeah.
Just ask simple questions. Just state the facts that evidence-based science and reality shows us there's male and female, and that's all. And can we please have protections in the Sex Discrimination Act for sex instead of identity? Just simple things like that. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it has a lot of power. And so I really encourage you. And if you or your daughters are involved in sporting organisations, I think this is where I'm seeing a lot of angst as well, because these girls are being forced to play against males and they don't want to. So some are just not playing. They're self-excluding, which I think is horrendous, because we need women in sport. We need girls to be active and out there in this space. But, families being threatened with legal action, with suspension, with expulsion. There's always strength in numbers. I've heard this is about a school, actually, a great initiative in South Australia and another one in Perth, where one mum just rang around to like 20 other mums to find out where they stood on the gender rubbish in schools. And as a block, they went, 20, 30, 40 of them to the school and very respectfully, very clearly said, this isn't on, this is what the standards we have for our children. And it worked. And so there's strength in numbers. So most of us have a network. Talk with your networks, work out what you can do, always be respectful, always be truthful. We don't need to rely on anything other than that. The power's in our hands when we have that. So Yeah, there's a lot of actions. And, you know, if you feel like you're in over your head, again, contact me. I'm more than happy to give advice or to support where I can.
Yeah, that's so good, Kirralie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just feel this is such a critical message for this time. Do you have any closing statements at all for our listeners today?
Look, I just want to encourage you that we're right and that we don't need to fear. There's nothing to fear here. This isn't a matter of opinion. This isn't a matter of religious belief, political belief, socioeconomic belief, or ethnic belief. This is just simple reality right there. Very first thing in the Bible, God says, and he created them, male and female. He created them and they were very good. So it's a beautiful thing. We need to be celebrating the differences between men and women. We're of equal value and worth to God, but we are different and that's okay. Women do need protection. Children definitely need safeguarding and protection. So just keep coming back to that place of truth, that place of peace and that place of love, because that's what we can be motivated in. And also, just to encourage people, you know, there are mega consequences if we don't stand up against this. You know, throughout history, I love history and I love looking at what's happened and what continues to happen. But we know so many of us think, oh, we would never have, you know, sided with the German Nazis. But so many people are so afraid to speak out. And I want to say, look, yep, there's a cost, but it's worth the cost. And I say to my kids all the time, choose your hard. You know, like it's hard to do this, but it's harder to do that. I think, yeah, it's hard to speak out, but it's harder. The consequences will be far harder if we don't. Strength in numbers, come back to the truth, that place of reality, and we've got this.
Yeah, that's really good. Kirralie, thank you. Friend, we are at a tipping point, okay? Truth is under attack and silence is no longer an option. Just as Kirralie said, God created male and female in his image. He is not the author of confusion, and he makes it clear in his word, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Gender ideology is not just a social issue. It is a direct attack on God's design. It denounces his creation and is therefore not founded on the truth. Whenever God is removed from a nation's rulership, we see societal demise. When we reject him, we open the doors to chaos, deception, and destruction. But when we stand on his truth, then we become a force for righteousness, justice, and real change. Friend, Kirralie has laid out a clear call to action. If we don't stand now, we risk losing the very foundation of our society. If today's conversation has stirred something in you, then don't just listen, take action. What can you do right now? Share this episode, support the movement, and demand leadership that upholds truth. Until next time, stay bold, stay informed, and never stop fighting for your family, your community, and your nation. I love you.
Thank you for listening to the Under the Rug podcast with Nalini Tranquim. To learn more about Nalini's online coaching programs, to book Nalini for your upcoming events, or for more information, please visit nalinitranquim.com/contact or email us at info@nalinitranquim.com.